This guy, Timothy Hood, 40 years old, former police officer with the Ranson Police Department, Jefferson County. He has been indicted on, you know what? I'm going to just stop right here. I'm going to take just a beat for you guys to, I want you to type down in the comments before I say it. How many counts of essentially stealing narcotics out of the police locker do you think this guy has? Just take 5. Ready? 4, 3, 2, 1. If you typed 50 counts, you got it right. 50 felony counts of obtaining a controlled substance by theft. The indictment filed on January 21st, 2026 alleges that Hood systematically stole narcotics from the Ranson Police Department's evidence room over a period spanning nearly 3 years. 3 years. Wow. So from, looks like March 2022 through April 2025. He was terminated from his position the same day the indictment was handed down by the Jefferson County grand jury. This case represents one of the most significant, that I know of, one of the most significant breaches of public trust that the Eastern Panhandle has seen, like with law, especially in the law enforcement community. Like, what is going on? What is going on? What is going on in our area? I don't know. So he is, or was, a corporal police officer for the Ranson Police. And so we've got charges, right? Charges. Obtaining a controlled substance by theft. 50 counts. 50 counts. Felonies. All felonies. Each count alleges that Timothy Hood did unlawfully, feloniously, and knowingly acquire or obtain possession of a controlled substance through misrepresentation, fraud, forgery, theft, deception, or theft, deception in violation of Chapter 68, Article 4, Section 403, parentheses, dash, of the Code of West Virginia. This is, they literally end it with, as amended against the peace and the dignity of the state. Because literally the dignity. How dare you go out and arrest whomever for whatever, drug related, send them to jail, send them to prison, essentially. I have not had a chance to review his traffic cases or anything like that to see what his arrest record looks like. And I am not alleging that he was literally arresting people and taking their drugs while he was arresting them, because it's not really what it looks like. But dude, if you were doing this and you were literally arresting people, sending them to jail, and then you were taking their drugs or going back and getting, one of your cop buddies, the drugs that he, procured from the evening, from the shift, how freaking messed up is that? That is so messed up. Over 3 years, this guy did this. So let's talk about the different substances that old boy liked to party with. We've got fentanyl, cocaine-based crack, heroin, methamphetamine, morphine, MDMA, oxycodone, alprazolam, oxymorphone hydrochloride extended release. Okay? Insane. There are so many incident numbers here that the indictment cite for the controlled substances taken from the locker room. It's related to at least 47 separate police incident numbers, indicating a widespread pattern of evidence tampering. Yet, you think the following incident numbers are referenced in the charging documents. I will attach the indictment to this post so you guys can see. Oh, my mic. So you guys can see all the information about it. There's a lot here, right? And I'm wondering if all these incidents are individual, traffic stops, arrests, when these drugs were confiscated. That's what I'm assuming, but I'm not 100% sure, so I don't want to say anything, but, that's what I'm assuming in my own opinion. All right, next. Talk about the drug crisis. If you're from here, you know about it. So the Eastern Panhandle of West Virginia has been significantly impacted by the opioid epidemic. We know this. And drug trafficking operations, Jefferson and Berkeley counties, where Ranson is located, have been identified as major distribution points for controlled substances. The Ranson Police Department's participation in the Eastern Panhandle Violent Crimes and Drug Task Force means officers like Hood would have had regular access to literally a buffet of whatever he wanted to feel that day, regular access to evidence, aka party favors, from high-level narcotics investigations. Can you imagine? You see the busts online, on the news and stuff, when they say, "Oh, we got these off the streets," and literally just some goofball cops just back there, Anyways, so let's talk about like evidence room protocols when you are a police officer. So you've got certain protocols where you've got a chain of custody documentation, restricted access to authorized personnel only, dual custody procedures for controlled substances, and regular audits and inventories. And that's my question. How did they like let this go on for as long as they did when they're supposed to be really like, you know, peeping what's going on here? They also have video surveillance. So I don't know. We're going to have to learn more about this story. I'm just reading you the summary of the indictment and the case and from what I know so far. So grand jury action. The Jefferson grand jury convened on January 21st, 2026. So just not that long ago, and returned the indictment against Hood along with 18 other indictments during that session. The testimony that led to the indictment was from a Sergeant Taylor and a Colonel Custer. And they I guess they saw something, they said something, all right? A prosecuting attorney is Adam Ward. He's a Jefferson County prosecutor. And then we've got the circuit court. And then we've got potential penalties. Let's talk about like, you know, what dude is facing right now, because dude is facing like, first of all, you're a cop. Like you have to like somewhat understand what you're doing. I mean, I'm not saying they're all that smart, but you know, obtaining a controlled substance by fraud, theft, or deception is a felony offense. Each count carries potential penalties of imprisonment from 1 to 5 years per count, fines up to $15,000 per count. With 50 counts, Hood faces a theoretical maximum of 250 years in prison. That's 250. That's like 3 people's lifetimes, okay? You know, he could have just not been a cop and just like done like, you know, criminal shit on the street and then just like gotten arrested for like 2. Why did you do this as a police officer? I don't make it make sense. Somebody make it make sense. I don't know. So these sentences most likely will be conserved concurrently rather than consecutively. And for those who don't know, concurrent is when they're all currently, that's how I think about it, currently run together. Consecutive is one after the other. So they kind of do stack them up, but I don't think they're going to give dude just 1 to 5 years all concurrent. So let's jump into like the impact of this, right? So theft of evidence from 47 separate incident numbers. I mean, that raises like very serious concerns. And it's interesting, like kind of how hush-hush the department kept this. But, you know, we've got like evidentiary chain of custody issues. Defense attorneys may argue that evidence tampering created reasonable doubt in cases where Hood had access to evidence. I don't even know what all of that means. All I know is that, listen, they'll send all of us to jail for less. Prosecutors may be forced to dismiss or reduce charges in cases where critical evidence was stolen or contaminated. You can't sit here and claim, you know, you as civilians claim that, oh, it was stolen, tampered with, and then it gets thrown out. But we've got appeals and reversals, of course, civil liability. The city of Ranson and Jefferson may face civil lawsuits from individuals wrongfully convicted or improperly prosecuted. That's the funny thing when you've got stuff like this, which is why, like, in like my case, if you are familiar with like my situation and the conflict of interest, a lot of times I feel like they don't, I'm not saying this is going to happen here, but a lot of times I feel like they don't want to necessarily go after it the way they should, because authority figures that are getting into trouble, there is a potential risk for the people they've incarcerated, that they've affected their lives in some type of way, you know, for their cases to be looked into again, because all of a sudden when you lose your integrity and you are making decisions over people's lives as an expert in some type of way, then that kind of goes out the window. It's about trust and integrity and stature and hierarchy. And so that's an interesting angle here. It definitely represents a significant breach of public trust. I would love to know if anybody has had any interactions with this guy, you know, out in Ranson. We got a big betrayal of oath here. He took an oath to uphold the law, right? And protect citizens. And he took his position to literally steal narcotics. So theft of controlled substances, you know, fentanyl and heroin. And I can only imagine what this officer is out there saying while he's like, because you know what officers, when they do their thing and like they're like really mean to you, like, oh, you know, yeah, you do this and do that, I'm going to find this in your car. They treat you some type of way. I just want to know how dude was out there treating, you know, the citizens he was pulling over and, you know, arresting them for drugs. If he was not anything other than respectful to them. Bro, you're cut from the same cloth, okay? Once again, here we are. This case undermines public confidence in law enforcement and, the integrity of these systems and these people in positions of power. Like, that's literally what the mission is here. Like, we're trying to make it different. So frustrating. Like, here we are again. Like, this is another big thing. I said 2026 was going to be a big year for this, right? These are the things that happen, the actions that were taken. Is that Hood was terminated on the day of the indictment, which he's terminated on the day of the indictment. So they had no idea this entire time. That's what you mean to tell me? Ranson PD, you guys did not know until just literally like yesterday, like January 21st, 2026, but all of a sudden this comes out, right? And you have all this knowledge, within a couple of weeks of the fact that he was doing this for years and years and years, but you're just letting him do it over and over and over again. This is what happened in the media so far. What's happened in the media is that there's been limited public information beyond the court filing. There's a brief article in the Journal confirming his indictment and his termination. Police Chief Jeff Cesar confirmed Hood's termination to media, but declined to provide additional details beyond what is contained in the public court record, citing the ongoing nature of the investigation. Shouldn't you have been ongoing investigating, for 3 years now? But all of a sudden now you don't want to say anything whenever people find out and they're asking questions. Like, the public deserves to know these answers. But interestingly, on the relative lack of extensive media coverage may be due to just the recent nature of the indictment, ongoing investigation potentially involving additional subjects. I don't know. Sensitivity around criminal cases. No, the sensitivity, the sensitivity is around? The sensitivity is around if you have a badge. If you've been arrested, your mugshot, I know my mugshot has been on the internet, on the interwebs, okay? And they're sitting here, they shield these guys, they shield these girls, they shield these guys, and it drives me insane because, God forbid, you whatever happens, you get in trouble and you might have like the worst, well, we all have the worst pictures at the ERJ because, I already said their camera program, they definitely need some additional funding for that program. But look at this. They sit there and there's barely any media coverage. And have you guys seen a mugshot? I haven't seen one. And why is that? That's really the biggest basis for me talking about this right now is I am so sick and tired of me, you, just regular people, right? Regular people, good people have hard times sometimes, whatever. And nights that you get arrested generally are probably some of, the worst nights of your life. One of the worst nights or days of your life. And what do? Snap a picture for you just so you can remember it and the entire world can look at you while you are already morbidly embarrassed when you are, devastated or angry or something terrible happened and the whole world, it's posted for the whole world to see. And, I think there was some legislation that was just introduced recently about taking that away from West Virginia, because I really don't agree with it at all. Not every state does that, by the way. We just use it to tear each other down. Probably the worst day of somebody's life. But this guy, no mugshot. These officials that get arrested, no mugshot. I'm sick of this, and this is something that I'm going to work on, is getting this mugshot thing removed so they can at least face the same situation and consequences as we do. This case serves as a stark reminder that the guardians of evidence and public trust must themselves be subject to rigorous oversight and accountability measures. The outcome of Hood's prosecution, along with any systemic reforms implemented in response, will be closely watched by law enforcement agencies, prosecutors, defense attorneys, and communities throughout West Virginia and beyond. And me and you, because we are on it. We are on it. All this is, retained through public information, public knowledge. Now, let's talk about the fact that he killed someone. In 2014, Officer Hood took the life of a 17-year-old boy who was suicidal, and he was still allowed to be a police officer after this.